All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. It's official now as Dan Hurley has signed his contract extension that's going to keep him in stores as the men's head basketball coach of the Connecticut Huskies. 6 years for 50 million. And nobody that follows the Huskies will complain about that price tag. Right now, Dan Hurley could run for governor of the great state of Connecticut, and he probably win. Okay. Connecticut has become the basketball capital of the nation as Hurley just led the Huskies to consecutive national championships. Okay. It's one of those where UConn is once again going to have a top five team to begin the upcoming season. Dan Hurley has done a tremendous job with his system there between recruiting high school players as well as getting guys from the portal. They fit into his system. And at the end of the day, he's winning and he's also sending guys to the NBA. Four Connecticut players just got drafted last month in the NBA draft. And it's been a very interesting time for Dan Hurley, over the last couple of months. Of course, going back to April, winning consecutive national championships. In May, in April and May, basically, turning down the University of Kentucky to be their next men's basketball coach, flirting with the NBA as the Los Angeles Lakers came looking for the services of one Dan Hurley, offered him 70 million for 6 years, and he's taking less money to stay at Connecticut, but nonetheless, he's going to be one of the highest paid coaches in men's basketball. I'll tell you like this: for Dan Hurley to leave UConn, it is going to take something very big elsewhere, or something is going to have to go catastrophically wrong at Connecticut. Maybe, a new AD, a new school president, whatever, that Hurley doesn't see eye to eye with. Maybe something like that for him to leave. And it's going to have to be something monumental, because you look at it like this: Dan Hurley just said no to two brands. He said no to Kentucky. And at the end of the day, Kentucky, you could probably make a very compelling case. In men's basketball, Kentucky is probably one of the bluest of blue bloods. Dan Hurley said no. Okay. Dan Hurley then said no to the Los Angeles Lakers, one of the most iconic franchises, not just in the NBA, but all of professional sports. So, again, like I said, it's going to have to be something monumental for Dan Hurley to leave Connecticut. You look at the wife factor, Andrea Hurley, both her and her husband are Northeast people. Okay. And if you look at every step of Dan Hurley's journey, he's a Northeast guy. He's from Jersey. Okay. He played his college ball at Seton Hall. You look at some of the coaching stops along his way: Wagner in Staten Island, okay, the University of Rhode Island, and then, of course, the University of Connecticut. That all feeds into Dan Hurley, who Dan Hurley is, and more importantly, who his wife is. And at the end of the day, happy wife equals happy life. Okay, it's one of those where Dan Hurley already has cemented his legacy at the University of Connecticut. Why go someplace else trying to chase a legacy when you can just make it happen for yourself where you're at? And you think about the basketball prestige that comes with the Connecticut program. And of course, it started with what Jim Calhoun built. We saw Kevin Ollie win a national championship there. And now Dan Hurley has gone back to back. And, of the six national championships that Connecticut has won in men's basketball, Dan Hurley can claim two of those on his watch. And there's a very good possibility that he wins at least another one as the head coach there. So it's one of those where his legacy is cemented there. and he don't have to go and chase it someplace else. It's one of those where he can just keep building upon what he has already established in stores. Now, like I said a couple of weeks ago, okay, when this decision came down the pike that he was going to stay, um, it's one of those where it's not only a win for UConn, it's also a win for the Big East, and it's also a win for college basketball as well for a variety of reasons. UConn is a very popular program. UConn is a powerhouse, and we've seen what they've meant to not only the Big East but college basketball as a whole. And then on top of that, in this era of the NIL, we've seen some great coaches in different sports step down, and for Dan Hurley to have left college basketball for the NBA, it would have been a very telling sign, and it would have, been hurtful for the sport. So you've got a 6-year deal. There's buyouts in it as well. The buyout decreases every year until the contract runs out in 2030. I think he's going to be extended between now and then if he truly wants to stay at Connecticut. And I think he truly does. You've heard rumors about him wanting to possibly go to the NBA. For Dan Hurley, in my opinion, to leave the University of Connecticut, he has to get an offer that he cannot refuse, and it has to be an opportunity that he can't refuse either. Like I said before, and I've said this multiple times, and I'm going to say it again: no basketball coach, no college coach, that is going to leave a program that he controls to go to the NBA if he doesn't have some type of say in personnel decisions. That, to me, I don't think Dan Hurley was going to get that with the Lakers. On top of that, you wanted to be another guy who could be potential coaching cannon fodder for LeBron on his watch, and you could probably be fired in about 12 to 18 months. I don't think so. So it's going to have to be something very big. A la, with what happened with Brad Stevens. Of course, people were saying when Brad Stevens was a Butler, totally different scenario though, but still, when Brad Stevens was at Butler, it was going to take something big for him to leave Butler, and people were thinking maybe he could possibly replace a Coach K at Duke or go to UCLA, whatever. He took something even bigger. He became the head coach of the Boston Celtics, and of course now he's in the front office for the Celtics. And of course, right now the Celtics just won the NBA championship. It's going to have to take something big for Dan Hurley to leave college for the NBA, and it's going to have to be something tremendously huge for him to leave to go to another basketball program at the collegiate level. You never say never, okay? But I don't see it happening anytime soon. I know the naysayers are going to go out there and say, well, Connecticut, they're playing in the Big East. The Big East is no longer a football conference. They're worried about money, this, that, and the third. I get it. But at the end of the day, okay, Connecticut is a basketball school. Connecticut has gotten back to its basketball roots. I know people, were throwing out the Big 12 rumor before from a football perspective. I think, in my opinion, I could be wrong on this, okay? I would see Connecticut go back to an FCS level program football wise before they left the Big East. And the reason is we've seen what Connecticut's basketball programs have became, both men's and women's, when they left the Big East and went to the American. It wasn't pretty. We've seen how a lot of the athletic programs, football and basketball wise, that were stronger in the Big East have struggled since they went to conferences such as the ACC or the Big 12. At the end of the day, you've got to focus on what brought you to the table. Yes, football generates more money at the collegiate level. I totally get it. I totally understand it. But Connecticut is built off of both their men's and women's basketball programs, which are once again striving in the Big East Conference. So it's one of those where it could happen. Okay, as far as Danny Hurley leaving Connecticut one day, but at the end of the day, I think he's still having too much fun. Coach, I mean, at the end of the day, he's a guy who was born to wear a whistle. Okay, he comes from a great coaching family, but at the end of the day, I think Dan Hurley is perfect for the college basketball pro level. I also think he is a guy that embodies college basketball. I think he's also a guy who embodies the Big East as well. And I think the marriage between Hurley and Connecticut, it fits like a glove. It works. And at the end of the day, if you've made the perfect sauce, there's no reason to go out there and tinker with it. Did Hurley look to seek more money? Absolutely. And did he get a bigger payday? Absolutely. How serious was he about going to the Lakers? I don't think he was completely serious because I don't think that the Lakers were completely serious about it because if they had truly wanted Dan Hurley like they said they did, they would have made it happen as soon as they fired Darvin Ham. And it took them quite some time before they got around to the Dan Hurley thing. I think Dan Hurley and the Lakers used each other. I think Dan Hurley used the Lakers to get more money out of Connecticut, in my opinion. And I think the Lakers used Dan Hurley to say, hey, you know what? We wanted JJ Redick all along as our head coach, but we want to go out there and say, hey, we did our due diligence and we're talking to somebody with basketball coaching experience. But nonetheless, home is where the heart is, like I said before. Dan Hurley's UConn, UConn's Dan Hurley. And I think now you have a dedicated coach who's now an even happier coach as he has more bank in his pocket. And I think that's only going to give him the opportunity to work even harder on, keeping his basketball program up with the Joneses, if you will. But at this point, being that Connecticut has won the last two national championships, the Joneses need to try to find a way to keep up with them. So you have one of the best basketball coaches going around in the nation right now. He's taken care of financially. His program is at the top of the game. And I think Dan Hurley is a guy that's going to keep them there in that mix for quite some time. Nonetheless, Dan Hurley's a college guy at the end of the day. He belongs in Connecticut, in my opinion. Okay. It's a perfect fit. You don't tinker with the sauce. And now UConn and Dan Hurley can move forward together. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365 that you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.